Good morning, everybody. Thank you for making time to be with us today. My name is Nekesa. I work with the iHub as Director of Community. Before we begin today, I want to put Joe on the spot. This is Joe. A lot of people who come to this forum know me and know Professor, but Joe is always here, even sometimes when one of us can't make it. I think the one constant is Joe. The reason there's photos on our website and our blog, the reason the videos are always out on time is really single-handedly because of Joe. He's a one, he really does everything end to end as far as content coming out of the iHub. And so, Joe, thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for Joe. So this week has been a particularly busy week for Joe and other members of the team. If anyone's been watching our Twitter feed and our blog, we've been running an acceleration program called Traction Camp. Startups from around the region coming together, early stage startups, going through business coaching and access to finance training. And the plan is that once they're done with the acceleration program, they really will be ready to scale. And so this past week we had everyone from the region in the country, in Nairobi, going through a boot camp that just ended yesterday. And so it was a long night for everyone. If anyone is interested in being part of the acceleration program, we will have a call for the second cohort, I think early next year, so please keep a watch out for that. It's a brilliant program to go through. Access to business coaching from mentors, in the region, particularly in Nairobi, from the World Bank. You get to know everything from how to pitch to how to build your teams to how to get money. It's really, again, an end-to-end program for anyone that's interested in scaling this startup. So today, our speaker, usually Professor, so Professor is always our speaker, but many times he invites other people. But today we have the privilege of just having Professor, who's going to talk through for the entire session. We'll begin with a conversation on data and then go into a conversation on future of work. For anyone that's new to the forum, Professor has been running these sessions for close to 3 years now, really as a follow-up to the regular articles he has in the papers, which I'm sure most of you follow. And so this is a time for anyone, particularly those that follow those conversations in the media, to meet him and ask questions that you weren't able to ask online or in person. So please do take advantage of having Professor with us today and every other Saturday, once a month at the iHub. So without much further ado, Professor, karibu.
Good morning. When we started this, we didn't quite have a serious objective. We started it almost immediately. I left the government just to share on ideas, on what's happening, on helping young people who are working on various things. We're still doing that, but I'm beginning to see that we are pivoting to a new area to discuss much deeper issues. Much deeper issues, and it has grown to a point now we have so many people coming to find out, I'm doing this, what do you think is the revenue model, what do you think the business model should be? But we would continue with the lecture series because there are so many things that are happening all over the world, and I think it's good we begin to share locally and be able to also become we understand that that which is going on in several parts of the world. Today, I'm going to talk about the work that has been going on locally and in Austria, and it also sort of opens up new areas of data that probably you didn't know about. The first lecture would be a project that I'm involved in on big data, and we're trying to build tools that would measure the performance of the achievement of the SDGs. And we took the first of the goals, of the SDG goals, that is poverty. It is the one that we're looking at. Previously, if you looked at many of the data that is available from the World Bank, from other sources, we normally say the very poor are people who earn below $1.9 per day. We could simply say that the economy is growing by 5%. Sometimes it doesn't get personalized, where people begin to understand how they relate to that growth. I've seen people argue when we say the economy grew at 6%, and then they ask, but I am the same. There is nothing that has changed in me. So we want to change that narrative and personalize such issues so that people begin to understand where they lie in relationship to what the government is saying they performed. The chart you have here, these are the total number of poor people, those who are below the 1.9. They are about 645 million globally. And what is happening, every second, someone jumps out of poverty. And of recent, we're beginning to see more people coming out of poverty. But at the same time, you find that people who are slipping into poverty. There are people, maybe they have begun to make it, and a relative falls sick, and all the investment goes there, and they fall from having gone out of poverty into poverty. But some of the red ones are the ones who are actually coming. We are still not finished with this. The earlier one we had is that you are running out and then you drop. We're trying to figure out, because visualizations are very powerful. So when you tell people that in this economy, we're seeing more people are getting into poverty, sometimes even politicians don't quite understand it. But when you show that these had come out, but they have sunk into poverty, and you have the solution, because the solution would come out of the policies that we put in place to mitigate against poverty. I'm going to show you several countries so you begin to understand, and maybe if you have ideas on how to use this data, we have it in every country at national level. It is only in Kenya where we have done sub-national, where we can compare Bungoma and Murang'a, what is happening, which county in Kenya is doing better than this. I've actually been doing articles around this and showing that whereas in Meru, we are getting almost 2 people per second out of poverty, in Nyeri, we are getting 2 people dropping out of poverty every second. So that tells you that if you shift to 2030, you probably find Meru would come out of poverty, but Nyeri would probably sink further into poverty unless there are some policy interventions. Compared ones, Homa Bay and Bomet. These are counties that are neighboring, but in Bomet, the life expectancy is 66. In Homa Bay, the life expectancy is 40. The question is, what do we do to improve the life expectancy in Homa Bay to be the same as Bomet? So those are the answers that we are seeking to answer at the sub-level, not at the national level. You see, when you do the average, for example, when we say that our GDP per capita is $1,300, if you remove Nairobi, the per capita drops to about 300 per person. So all the GDP is being generated. Actually, 60% of the GDP is generated here. And if you have a concentration like that, then when you do an average, it is injustice to those who don't fall within Nairobi. And even within Nairobi, some of the districts are actually very, very, very poor. And the question is, what do we need to do? What are the policy interventions that we need to do? So I want to show you a couple of things. A lot of newspapers globally, and we have even books which talk about Africa rising. And we decided, let's look at the data and see whether Africa is not rising. It is not actually rising. That's a wrong narrative that has been going around, and every country has been very happy. Oh, we are growing, we are doing good, but they are not doing very good. The only three countries that may eliminate poverty as per SDG 1 is Ethiopia. I think this is Mauritania and now tests. Let's see. Oh, Côte d'Ivoire, Mauritania, and I'm gonna be like Trump, who called Namibia Nambia. Yes, there are only three countries that by 2030 that would have most people out of poverty. Yeah? Now let me show you. The red ones, by 2030, they will be worse off than they are today. They will be worse off than they are today. Just pick one of the red. Nigeria, Angola, which one? We try Congo. This is Congo. If you look at Democratic Republic of Congo, they have 58 million people, almost 59 million people living in extreme poverty. 59 million people living in extreme poverty. They need to have an escape rate of 8 people per second for them to attain the 2030 SDG 1. But instead of people escaping, 3 people per second keep on dropping into poverty per second, meaning this is 2017. Look what happens when we move closer to 2030. You see what is happening? The number is rising. So I need at some point it would go up, and by that time is when they would have realized things are bad, and 1.6 will be dropping into poverty even by 2030. And if I combine with the number of people dying because of poverty, that's why the total number. If you see in between here, you see it's higher. It's higher. So this is actually very serious for Congo. If you try look at Nigeria, the biggest of all. And we are here. Right now, 79 million people are below poverty. But as you go towards there, more people drops into poverty. But when you see the newspaper saying that Africa is rising, the middle class has been growing. But then the number of poor also have been growing. And growing more because we are giving birth like rats, you know. Something must be done. There must be a policy to either lower that, or from studies, even in Kenya here, when women go up to university, the average number of kids they get is around 3. When they drop out of high school, the average comes to 5. When they drop out of standard 8 or below, the average is 8. So what do you need to do? Every woman should be in class for as many. That is the policy. It's very serious, by the way. When they drop out when they are teenagers, if some 12, 13, 14, Kwale, Kuria, they marry 13-year-olds. You start giving birth at 13. By the time the eggs are finished, you have 40 kids. So you actually need to have that girl in school to a point where they cannot begin to have that. This is what I'm talking about, the policies that we need to have in place that would have an impact. And the fewer the kids you have, the more likely that you would be out of poverty. Because you have more kids, you have less resources. So to fight poverty, policies must begin to come in place and fight that. Look at Ethiopia. In 2017, there are 23 million Ethiopians in poverty. But look at this number. Their target at 23, they need to have 3 people coming out of poverty per second. But they are getting people out of poverty per 5 people out of poverty per second. Yeah? 5. Ethiopia's GDP growth is actually 12%. It is the fastest growing economy in the world. Yeah? Ethiopia is the fastest growing economy in the world. And I will show you why that is happening. And it's not that I like dictatorship, but every economy in Asia, we keep on comparing ourselves. Oh, we were with Korea, Singapore, blah, 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 blah. There is one thing we didn't do: disciplining our people. These countries discipline. Everybody in Singapore had to go into the military before they could go to college. The same thing as in Korea. Yeah. When we started the BPOs, business process outsourcing, and we got many young people to come work, at the end of the month, when they got salaries, 1/3 did not show up. They didn't show up. And they come 15 days after. Where were you? Oh, I went to see my mom. But why didn't you tell us that you were to go? There is a lot of indiscipline, and that's what the Asians did. We stopped complaining that the government didn't do anything, but we didn't do nothing to us. Ethiopia is the only country, under South Africa recently, that has a constructive engagement with China. That has a constructive engagement with China. Let me show you something before I continue with it, but you have seen the difference. If they are removing 5 people and only 3 are falling, the net effect is that this thing is growing faster. And I'm giving you one of the reasons. Right? There are actually several lessons from there. What discipline gives you, you begin to understand the matrix that you need to look at your farm. You saw there she's talking about logistics costs. You ask many investors in this country, what is how much is the logistics cost? They don't know. Yeah? But what they have done, we have something called AGOA, African Growth Opportunity Act from the US. No country has met the allocation targets that they have. They've been asking, extend it. Here in Kenya, the textile industry, which we're supposed to have exported, we don't do it. Now Chinese have offices in Mombasa. They import things and then re-export from Kenya because we are not able to do, and we are crying about unemployment. Yeah? Now, you're beginning to see where the problem is. Hello? Yes, we have a serious problem in that end. So Ethiopia, at this escape rate, just see what happens at the end of 2030. Clean. There will probably have very few poor people, but still Somalia would be red, South Sudan will be red, Chad, Central Republic of Africa, Congos will be still red until they change their policies. Kenya would be struggling somewhere there. Let's see what happens. Okay, as of today, we have 11 million people who are below poverty. We need, this is per hour, not a second. We need to do 91 almost 92 people per hour for us to attain the goal by 2030. But we're doing 29 per hour. You can divide and see. So we are not doing very well in that aspect. And we need to have young people working. That Chinese lady said, Africa can be competitive, yeah? If we make young people to be more productive. You saw her mention several matrices. It takes them, I don't know, 100 days here in China, it takes them. We need to get that level of discipline. Most of the young people get into work, and that's how you can lower this poverty. Then you have another policy around population growth. Then we can think about achieving this by 2030. Now, we have done at sub-county level. What I want to do, when we launch it, I want to launch it here. So you can play around and see which county governor we are going to vote out, because things are not working. Things are not working according to what we need to see in order to achieve the SDG by 2030. So we have other things that I want to show you. Any question from poverty? I'm shifting to another poverty clock. Yeah. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Thanks, Prof. Thanks, Prof, for that question. For the presentation. My question relates with whether you're going to have this visualization linked to sort of a simulation where several factors are considered. For example, in the case of Ethiopia, we can see it's going to get to almost zero poverty by 2030, but that's because of just of the growth. But then there'll be the influx of the neighboring countries and how that will affect Ethiopia itself. dictatorship and how that would affect. So how these variables would then have an implication on that visualization. Yeah.
I actually did not finish when I said that I don't like dictatorship, but if you see the Asian countries that moved out of poverty and succeeded, they dealt with economic reforms first. Then they came into economic reforms. What we are trying to do, that both political and economic, we can do the reforms, we are wasting our time. It is not working. That's how the number of people who are not working increase every year. Yeah? It increases every year. In the Constitution, we put the Bill of Rights. People come and say, it's my right that I can't work. You know, the people need to be whipped to work until they are doing this. This is very true, by the way. From Malaysia, Singapore to Korea, it didn't just happen. It did not just happen. India has been struggling as a democracy. China comes from nowhere and it passes India. India is still struggling to do political and economic reforms. Even the Western countries that you see, a lot of young people go through military. So they have a very significant number of people with serious discipline, yeah, that carry the whole nation. This is the problem. We started the youth program, and everybody said, my son can't go there, my daughter can't go there, and whatever. And this is not working. It is not working.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. For me, I wanted to ask why Ethiopia? What is happening in Ethiopia, and what can you do as Kenya? Ethiopia is just a neighbor next door. What is that Ethiopia doing that they are the fastest in the world? And what can we, Kenya, immediately do so that we can also do? 2030 is not far away.
Can I show you a small video? Can I show that to answer this? Yeah? When we were the first ones to talk about the tech park and did everything and did whatever, but we started arguing whether it would work or not. Yeah? Yeah? Ethiopians came here and they saw what we had done. They went and implemented. It is working. Yeah? It's very hard to navigate through where everybody has got an opinion. Everybody. They took the blueprint from here and went and implemented it. Yeah? So that's, you can check later on and see whatever that is. The people who had come here to put up in concert, they were device manufacturers. We said the National Land Commission has not approved subdivision to give you the land, the whatever, the registration of. It took them 3 months. They went to Ethiopia. Exactly 1 month, they built the factory. The same people. Today, 25% of the feature phones in African continent are manufactured in Ethiopia. That was your opportunity. We lost it. Now, our young people are not working. The Ethiopians, you can see the difference. As there was one other question
there. Is your model just based on good leadership?
What?
Is the model based on the numbers? Are they based on just good leadership? Because I can argue...
I think good followership.
Good followership.
Yeah, if everybody has got an opinion and you entertain it, no matter what leader you have, it's actually useless.
Because variables can change.
Yes.
We agree on that. Because Ethiopia can have a massive earthquake and destroy those numbers in a few years. But is this just leadership? Because the way I look at it, those numbers are very precise in terms of even seconds. So are you saying if we changed our leadership, things would accelerate in the same way the numbers are computing on your graph?
Oh yeah. With respect to this, yes.
Nothing else other than leadership. Because I think we've said, you have worked in government, and there have been a lot of policies that we've set. Is it just leadership?
Leadership has a huge role to play. A huge role to play. You must have, I'll tell you our experience in building the fiber optics. World Bank, everybody listened to World Bank, and World Bank was saying we must have a common cable the whole of East African region, because you can't consume the entire capacity. Yeah? There was not even a cable in this, and that, because I want to answer that comprehensively. All right, yeah? Can you see? Yeah? Yeah? Kinda. This is 2009. There was not even a single cable there. 2009. And a couple of meetings that we used to go, we discovered that everybody from these African countries who went there, their interest was per diem and visiting a new place. So the thing had been going on for 7 years, and we said, this is nonsense. So we came and told our president, it's not going to happen, because next week we are here, next month we'll be in Cape Town, Harare, and we were now looking for better places to go, and per diem. So we said, Mr. President, it's not going to work, let us do it on ourselves. And he said, where do you get money from? We said we will do a PPP. We started in 2006, towards the end. By 2009, the cable had landed in Mombasa. But what we went through, if you read the newspapers, people were saying, who is going to use this capacity? This is a white elephant, You should block your ears when you hear that, And as people were saying that, others were writing to anti-corruption. So for the 1.5 years, I endured every Friday evening with anti-corruption. They are saying, P.S., you are telling us that you put a wire, you call it a wire, in the water, 5,000 kilometers. Has it ever been done anywhere? For 1.5, I almost gave up. I thought I was mad. Yeah, but the moment this cable landed in Mombasa and we started using, of course we gave subsidy to universities, whatever, and then consumption went very high. Everybody brought the cable. Now we have 4, the 5th one is coming. So you have to get either drunkard to do something fast, and then everybody sees this is working. There are so much potential. We have SGR. We are saying, the average is whatever, spend this is a dead thing, this is whatever. Go there today, whether you can get a ticket. You can't get the ticket to go to Mombasa. You have to book. So that is the problem that we have. The first day I wrote to the Kenyan newspaper that Ethiopia is making the light rail. Even Kenyans living in Ethiopia called me a madman and said, we have not seen such a thing. Yeah? Today, the congestion in Ethiopia, for most people, they just get on the light rail and they get to town. It takes you 4 hours if you come to the airport at 4, 5 to come to Nairobi. It takes you 4 hours. A plane from here to Dubai is 4 hours. You know, it begins and you begin from the airport. You are here at 4 when people are now in some. Just think about that. Efficiency, productivity. Growth is brought about by productivity. And that's why I said, follow us. When you attack, let's say we should be saying, you have started, let's see what it will do, and we stop there. But people write, people complain, we are perpetual complainers in everything. Yeah? That's the...
Hi, Professor. This is more of a comment, just but to answer your question, and what you've added about SGR, the Chinese are coming in a big way. There are several towns, I believe there's some big industrial parks coming. Athi River, I think Eldoret, and I'm sure Naivasha, Nakuru will be having some bigger things happening.
And we're sleeping, yeah.
Yeah. And I think some of the older firms here are taking note and are a bit worried because the Chinese have subsidized factories and even getting export out of China for anyone to compete here, even if it's on glass and other things, they can't get the prices that the Chinese are bringing in materials at. So start learning Chinese or Mandarin. And,
let me
but
say,
please, I'd like to hear your comments.
Let me add what he's saying, because that's a macro issue that normally we don't understand here. The dynamics are, China was fearing that the population will grow so fast, and they limited every couple to 1 child. That policy is hurting them now. You know, when you have 1 child, everybody loves that 1 child. But when there is such love, you can't have that kid to wash dishes. Yeah? You want them to be something big else. So they are missing people to work in factories. That's why they shifted a lot of factories to Vietnam. Vietnam is just coming up like this. You begin to hear Kenyans saying, oh, Vietnam came from there. These people were in the war, they came and went through. You have similar opportunities. Similar opportunities. Ask, what is it that I should do? Yeah? To take advantage of the SGR. And then we say, don't look for land in Nairobi where you can't afford. Go to what you call Voi or somewhere there. But Kenyans don't want to live in Voi. Manufacture things there and bring them here to Nairobi. We have avocado. We import avocado creams for women into this country. Ask, how can I convert avocado into cream? Yeah? And sometimes those who sit under avocado tree, it reminds them, it hits them on the head, and nothing happens. Yeah? So we have sort of some problem. We have a problem. And lots of opportunities. From a lot of this data, which now we are saying we need to go out and talk. Listen to this. 2005, our consumption for wheat was 800,000 tons. Today, we have gone past 2 million tons. Local production in 2005 was 500,000 tons. Today, it is 350,000 tons. we are importing 1.7 million tons of wheat into this country. Whom are we making rich? Who are we making rich? And Africa has 60% of the global arable land. Global arable land. Nobody is using it. Yeah. Then we ask, we don't have jobs. How can we must create the jobs. We must create the jobs. Yeah? Last question? No? Okay, I move on to another. You can play around with this quietly. Make sure nobody sees you, because nobody sees you. Population.io. Okay, this is the number of people globally. Every second, others are saying bye-bye to us, and the new ones are coming. There are several factors that are in play. If you put your correct date of birth, the algorithm would give you the estimated date of death if nothing changes, if nothing. Now you should ask, why should I know when I will die? Yeah? It is important because we have also looked at several risk factors. Our life expectancy in this country, I think women are 65, isn't it? Women are 65, and the men are 63. Yeah, life expectancy. It just moved up from 55, simply because we found a way of prolonging life of the HIV patients. So HIV is one factor, and as is being dealt with, our life expectancy goes up. One other problem is malaria, which kills a lot of people. Then we have waterborne diseases affecting the children who have been born, who have just been, the less than 5 years, mortality rate. It's going down, which means our life expectancy would go up. Then there are other variables, which we call them risk factors. If you smoke, yeah, you clean 2 years out of your life expectancy. If you were to die at 63, you will die at 61. On average. so if you don't smoke, you actually add those 2 years to yourself, you see? So if you mitigate against all those risks, then your life will be much longer, up to more than 10 years, when you see you might be dying. Are we together in the whole thing? So this is now giving you the power to extend your life rather than just waiting and die. Yeah? With all the risk factors you should have controlled. If you think HIV is the problem, then be celibate, and then you live longer. Yeah? You live much longer than everybody else. That's what we are trying. We are trying to personalize the data, and you make a decision yourself on this one. And we're going to have several other ways of looking at such things. That is how you are able to find some counties, the life expectancy is much lower, others, the life expectancy is much higher. And the people, hence, people live longer in those areas. Very clear. Now, any question, then I shift to the new other areas that. Yes.
The statistics, do they consider things that could emerge like diseases that are, diseases that are, what do they call them?
Chronic diseases?
No, the ones that are not lifestyle, the ones that are they've become immune or resistant to the current drugs.
Oh, like
that they would reduce the number.
Like TB. TB is one that we have resistance in drugs, isn't it?
Or the emerging ones, like the bird flus, the viruses that keep emerging and wiping out people.
What the algorithm looks at is it takes the averages, how many people like die from malaria in this area compared to this, how many people die from this specific disease. It also includes the number of people who will die out of chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension. If you see, I think this might even go down with the number of fast food restaurants that we have. People are being very careless now. It would actually reduce because instances of diabetes, hypertension will be higher than it was before. So look at these restaurants and say, maybe I will spoil myself once a week or once a month so that you are able to avoid that. But if you hog it and then you come to know several years later that you are supposed to be careful, probably you may not save yourself. Yeah? Yes?
Good morning. It was a nice lecture. When the issue of the cables, when you decided to go against what the World Bank was telling you and decided to do something that would work for Kenya, I would say that that illustrates the issue of developmentality and governmentality. So should we as a country then stop listening to people who are telling us the way to go and decide what we should focus on? And if we decide what we should focus on, how are we going to get the money? Because we need them for funding. So how do we deal with that?
Good question. Number one, money has never been a problem. Never been a problem. Yeah? You have just taught yourself to believe that money is the problem. Yeah? Someone called John Stuart Mills, yeah, said that you can have, besides the three factors of production, land, labor, and capital, yeah, if there is no entrepreneurialism, it is a waste of time. Yeah? Africa has got land, Africa has got labor, Africa can generate capital, but what has been lacking is entrepreneurialism. Yeah? Let me prove to you that money isn't a problem. A small company started here called Twiga Foods, and they took a small problem, bananas, yeah, bananas, and said we would develop the entire supply chain of the banana, yeah? They are using big data. They go to every kiosk and ask them, how many bananas do you sell per day? And they say, well, I have 100. Within 1 month, they know the average consumption. Then they went to the farmer and said, how many bananas do you produce? And then they guaranteed them, we would pay you for your bananas. And then they guaranteed the kiosk owner that you can only sell what you are capable of selling. If it remains, give us back the one you don't sell. What I have told you, we call it the value proposition. There is no kiosk owner who is going to buy from her if she says, I've done the sale, shauri yako. If it gets rotten, it's yours. That's a value proposition, yeah? That's what they did, yeah? They perfected it. Last year, they sold 55 million bananas. If you multiply by 10 bob, that is $500 million, isn't it? $500 million. There are several companies that don't see $500 million in this country. Then they said, we need to scale. We now have the model, we need to scale. You can check in the web. They went to raise money. They couldn't go past Dubai. They raised 10 billion. 10 billion. A good idea would give you would get the money. Now, we don't go with those good ideas to venture capitalists because we are dependent on donor aid. We're dependent on donor aid. Everything we went against World Bank, we succeeded. Everything. So it's some food for thought. Should we now be waiting to be told we are giving you this much money, or should we go forward? World Bank did not invest even one coin in Teams. We raised money from the telcos and the partnership with the UAE government. So let us not confine ourselves thinking around what we have been thinking and say we can open up these economies and change it. There are several ways of doing things that we need to do. Yeah?
Yeah, Prof. So my contribution on the life expectancy, I'm just thinking everyone wants to live longer, right? And so there are some specific areas which are usually prone with certain diseases or,
exactly.
You know. So maybe I would love to have some kind of input into the model such that if I travel to China and maybe there's an earthquake or there's an outbreak of a certain disease, it tells me, okay, don't go to this place because you might reduce your,
How many, the outbreaks don't come like every time. You know, don't worry about, in fact, outbreaks won't kill you. Yeah? What will kill you is where you live and what is your lifestyle in that place where you live. That's why we say, where do you live? Now, we want to put that into sub-county, sub-national level, and then we can tell you, if you live in this place, you have a much greater chance of dying from this. Even within Nairobi, by the way, there are some places where you live where the crime is very high, that you can actually die from crime than from any other disease. Yeah? Is that true? the chances of you dying, it's like Americans say, when women hit 40, they will probably die from a terrorist attack than get married. So they look at the chances, chances of this is what they say in America anyway. But anyway, okay. Question? No. Let me. I don't need the computer now. What I've been doing also, I've been going around the world. We were in Canada, we were in Germany, discussing the future. We were looking at the future of learning and the future of work. These two concepts are beginning to impact us locally. As we shift more into digital transformation, you are beginning to see the impact on the ground. Most banks are beginning to introduce artificial intelligence. And once they are doing that, they actually don't need tellers. And one bank has already removed several tellers. They are already consolidating banks, isn't it? Am I lying, or that is the truth? Should we just sit and wait until we have thousands of young people on the streets who had been working before and have no jobs, or we should begin to talk about it now? Yeah, so that we begin to understand what is it that is hurting us and how can we mitigate this going forward. One thing, people blame computers for loss of jobs. It is actually wrong to do that. President Moi in 1982 said there must be no computers in government offices because they are taking jobs of secretaries. Yeah? Did we have fewer secretaries because of that? Because later on we introduced computers. Computers now became they were being used in every office, and they improved productivity. Most of you can't remember or can't know what problem secretaries went through. They used to use the typewriter. Imagine you take it to your boss and he puts a red pen, this is nonsense, go and write again. This is what used to happen. Maybe it's only me who saw that. There were many problems with typewriters that computers solved. So we must begin to know that in the days to come, so what is going to happen? Where will the jobs be shifting towards? There was a picture of an internal combustion engine in The Economist, and they said the death of this of the internal combustion engine. That has been around for more than 100 years, but it is going. The UK government has a policy that by 2050, there should not be one single vehicle on the street that is spewing smoke. And other countries would follow the same, would follow that way. We have 1 billion cars on the roads. What would happen, or where will the jobs be shifting? Already we are seeing the electric cars, Tesla, and other things. So we need those skills so that we can dump this and move to these new areas. But what is being said all over, it is not what you study today. In fact, most of you who are finishing college now, probably will change jobs like 10 times before you die. And the change you shift towards would have nothing to do with what you are doing from the past. People are seriously injecting AI into accounting because there is so much theft and they need the computers to work on the books of accounts. Where would you be with your CPA and BCom and whatever? You will just be bragging around with it to get married, but it would not help you for anywhere. So the mitigation is that everybody thinks nobody can tell you what would happen, but you must be ready for lifelong learning. For lifelong learning. And I have seen some of my older students who were fascinated and said, well, IT is going to be big. They were not computer scientists, but they decided to study by themselves, and they have heavily succeeded by themselves because the entire knowledge is here. Entire knowledge is here. You could be anything you want to be if you wanted to be, by starting from low and moving up. And in most places now, they don't care. It's only Kenya that asks for papers, you know. Now we are discovering even some governors didn't quite have those papers. those papers. So we must begin to think what's going to happen. We anticipate. Yeah? We know AI is going to take a lot of jobs, the ones we know of today, but it's going to create a lot of other jobs that we don't know today. Those of you who are older, was there a job like a blogger 10 years ago? There wasn't. And you're going to hear some stupid new jobs called combinations of whatever that is coming. And everybody, every school in the Western world, they want to inject what they call creative thinking, creative design, so that they prepare you to think outside of what we've been thinking throughout. But if we begin from this and say, I want to learn, I have tested that actually someone can actually, under a different environment, be made to do something they don't want. Yeah? My son, when he was in high school, Form 2, he was struggling with math, completely struggling with math. And at one time, he came with his friend and said, could you ask the government to make it optional? And I said, why would you want that? He said, because it spoils marks, you know, it's counted even if you are not. And I put him on Khan Academy from very low. And because it was computers, and because anytime he wanted to show me his reading, and if it is the computer, I would allow him, he got hooked to that and came up. By the time he was finishing in Form 4, he came up with an A-, from struggling to there. Then in college, I never said anything. I don't care what you do. 2 years, I asked him, what is your major? Of course, math. People. And so many young ladies have done the same when they used to fear that math is not for women. And math is not for women. But math opens up a lot of space for you. A lot of space for you. Yeah? Let me also tell you something that is happening that would impact us, and we're already seeing the impact on the ground. When Amazon bought Whole Foods retail, people did not understand, but it's only now that people are beginning to understand what is going to happen in the days to come. Several small companies had started online, including Jumia. There are several food delivery who would guarantee organics. They have destroyed giants, Nakumat, Uchumis. These are the ones who ate into their vegetable and whatever, and they are not able to sell. Yeah? And they are collapsing because, and I sympathize with Tuskies for actually putting their nose into some before they fully understand the dynamics. How many of you have seen Amazon Go? Amazon Go, 1, 2, 3. For the sake of the others, can we play it? Yeah, we played. And then I can explain locally what, right?
4 years ago, we started the What would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store, so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We use computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like we find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go. No lines, no checkout. No, seriously.
Convenience. Yeah, we need it in Kenya because the plastic bags have been banned. So you actually go with your bag shopping. But you heard Safaricom is getting into e-commerce. Some of those who are looking to buy the Nakumats and Ujumi, they are looking at e-commerce. So there are serious changes that are going to happen even in this market. But in the US, 3.5 million people working in the teller will lose their jobs. Yeah? But there will be several jobs behind Amazon, actually behind Amazon, who are working with these machines. But you have to retrain yourself to do that. As we are seated here, Amazon is actually training young Kenyans at DDT. Why would they train them? It's because they are looking at the entire world. Entire world. This is just a pilot in the US, and it would go boom throughout the world. So we actually need to anticipate, prepare ourselves such that we can be able to be competitive as individuals. So when you are fired as a teller, don't sulk and go die. Yeah? Just find a new thing to do and completely change yours, a makeover. a complete makeover. This is why I thought it's necessary we introduce this and begin to discuss and see how we can be able to improve ourselves. Usually, even the Bible says, my people die because of lack of knowledge. But do we have centers of knowledge other than like we meet here so that you go dig into this and find that there are things you must do to prepare yourself for the future dates that we don't know. So nobody knows those future jobs. Nobody knows what you need to do today to take advantage of those jobs, but you must be ready to continuously update yourself. So I would rather we have now a discussion a little bit, then we'll finish. Questions? Yes.
Professor, thank you very much. I prefer to stand, so I hope it's okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and it's interesting what you've been talking to us about. But I do think that actually entrepreneurship is probably the last hope in terms of something that can bring us together so that we can move forward, because I do not see anything else. However, I do think that, and you mentioned that you think that we do have a problem. And I think that problem is I don't know whether it's a Kenyan problem or it's an African problem. And it's a problem of, like, giving the example of your project, where instead of getting support, you are being pulled down. And that's definitely something that any entrepreneur who tries to do something big in this country has to go through. Mm-hmm. How do you turn a people who do not have an entrepreneurship bag into entrepreneurs? And personally, I do think that as Kenyans, and I speak for Kenyans because I'm a Kenyan, and I've been doing business for about 20 years, from a small factory to a marketing agency. And I've actually realized that even myself, having spent 20 years, now is when I'm turning myself into an entrepreneur. Because a lot of us went into business, either because we didn't want to go hungry, or we wanted a big car. And so what happens is that with time, if you don't figure that out, you get lost. Now, going by what you're telling us now, going back to, I'm trying to find a solution. So what do we do? What do I do as an individual so that possibly for my family and my country, I can make a difference? Number one, if you look at us generally as we're traders. We're traders mostly because we learned it from the people that colonized us. Most Kenyans do trading business. We don't add value. You get something, you sell it to somebody else. You find value without necessarily empowering somebody. I mean, look at all the industries, whether it's insurance, whether it's banking. The biggest challenge is that a lot of what we do is brokerage. On the other hand, if you look at all our big businesses, whether it's insurance, they're not. And I'll give you, and why I say this is because back in like 1997, with partners of mine, when I finished university, we started a textile factory, and we were among the first people to try and do AGOA. We didn't succeed because, number one, we went for bank loans, and it just didn't work. So I have an experience of AGOA, and it's true, the potential is still great. Unfortunately, it's mostly been taken up by foreign companies.
Because we didn't do anything? Because
we didn't do anything. But there are also some core problems right there. Back in 1997, if you sold a t-shirt, a normal white t-shirt. I remember we used to do contracts where we could sell a t-shirt for up to 300 shillings. Today, you will get a t-shirt for the same price, 20 years later. And that automatically tells me that there's something extremely wrong with the economy.
With us.
With us. There's something wrong because if 20 years later you sell a t-shirt, I think you can get a t-shirt for 350, isn't it? Possibly even 300 today. We used to sell it for the same price. The difference is then we made money, now you don't make money. Because fuel's gone up, power, everything you can think of has gone up. So those are fundamental things that tell you that, and I agree with you, policy. I think policy is extremely important because I remember we tried to get cotton we used to get cotton from Arusha, sunflower. We tried to go the export way, but it's a bit difficult if you're a small company. So I come back to me as an individual. I don't think that Kenyans per se, I think that entrepreneurship is the first part of possibly what can transform us maybe in the next 20 years if we work very hard, because it gives people a vision, an idea of something they're working towards. We can add discipline after that, and everything else after that. It's the only thing I see. I mean, the other things that change how people think are things like religion, and I mean, there are not too many things that can do that. Now, because we don't want to go into politics, because that's a bit complicated. And I think one person was trying to focus on leadership. Is it only leadership that can take us there? You enter into politics. How do we as individuals incorporate entrepreneurship and the real entrepreneurship? Because if you look at Americans, you look at Chinese, you look at Indians, there is a very clear objective of why they do what they do. I mean, for the Chinese now, it's the government, everybody is working in the same direction of driving themselves, who they are, forward, which means globally taking over. Let's use, for lack of a better word, global domination.
Yeah.
So how do we?
Yeah. I am happy that you have asked that question.
Yes.
I did an article last Monday in Nation Online about the Somali. The Somali came as refugees, but their property portfolio in this country, no one can match at all. And I gave the reasons why. If you go to Wangzhou, these are new areas, Turkey, our planes are full by people traveling to buy things and sell here. Yeah? You find 200 people, they travel to Wangzhou and buy the same goods from the same shop, they come to sell it here. The Somali, because they have a global network and they have ways of doing value transfer through Hawala, yeah? They call one in Wangzhou and they come together and say, me, I want this, I want that, I want that. And one person buys that and gets bulk discount for shipment and sends to Nairobi. They receive it here. Now, the cost of 200 people is not there, isn't it? Then they sell the same products, they will sell them at half the price of most of other people who travel there because they have to recover their cost. We have the problem of this Lone Ranger mentality, where that I can do myself. That's number one. That you go, you can't even, as you are seated in the plane and say, next time, you know what I buy, we know the price, you actually go, and then I can go next time. You would have actually lowered the price for that, and then you can compete locally. You can't compete. Number two, most of the eggs we eat come from South Africa, or they come from Kampala. Yeah? So I sought to find out why would an egg be so expensive, a local egg. So I went to Murang'a. And I found many farmers with layers. But these farmers cannot look at KTDA and see the concept of aggregation. Yeah? Because if everybody in KTDA picked their tea and looked for a factory in Nairobi, they won't make it. So each farmer gets 2 trays, gets into a matatu to come and sell 2 trays in Nairobi. Yeah? The transport back and forth, 300. One egg has already 5 shillings. You are selling it at 10. They don't even know the cost of feed. So probably the cost of feed was 6 shillings. So every time they do that, they lose 1 bob, but they don't see it. They can't see it. That's why there is perpetual poverty. Nobody has gone to organize those farmers and they say, let's do aggregation. Here is a church compound. Bring your eggs, we'll pay you. Then you have like 10,000 eggs. Send a 7-tonner vehicle, 3,000 bob. An egg will be 20 cents costs of transport. This is what this lady was talking about, the cost of logistics. The cost of logistics, it must come down to be competitive. Yeah? We reduce that, there is not one single South African egg that would come here because our eggs would be more affordable. We are not thinking like that. Twiga Foods, they organized the banana sector. Yeah? They found the supply chain. There are several other. We should be thanking God for the many problems we have. Because each one you solve, you become rich. Any one of it that you solve, boom, you succeed. That's number 2 point about us. The president of Uganda said, if I had 500,000 Kenyans here, Uganda would be developed. Why? Because every small business in Kampala is run by Kenyans. Yeah? Every other bank managers are Kenyans. Yeah? So he looked at it, these people are industrious, they are here and succeeding. The first example was the Somali immigrants, Kenyan immigrants into Uganda, Kenyan immigrants into Rwanda. They are doing very well. They are doing very well. The reason why US is like the most entrepreneurial is the free movement of people. You are born in Alaska or you are born in Nebraska, but you move to New York to do business. Yeah? We love being around here. If I went to my village to set up an enterprise, even if God helped me, I will not succeed. Why? Because the following day, you are the chairman of the school, the chairman of the church. Someone has dropped dead, you are the chairman of the funeral committee. Yeah? By the time you finish the chairmanships, which will take the whole day, you are not doing your business. Then the issue of cash flow. And I want you to answer this question. A woman comes with a sick child. You give her the medicine. Then she comes the following day and say, I still haven't found money for the yesterday one, but I need more medicine. And you said no, and the child dies. What will be the speeches at the funeral? Aliua mtoto. Alinyima mtoto. Dawa. You know? And you are actually trying to look at your cash flow. You don't want to lend because you may not get that. Nobody understands, but studies show immigrants or people who have moved from where the Jewish people succeeded, the Indians in East Africa succeeded by being away from there. Even those who moved internally in this country, the displacements of the Kikuyu made them very successful entrepreneurs. Even the Luos who moved to Mombasa succeeded in Mombasa. You understand this. Why aren't you in Zambia doing business? If you go to Zambia, everybody will just be, doing that. You succeed in that. You cannot succeed in an area where you are mixing social politics and everybody is praising you. The moment you succeed a little bit, everybody calls you Mheshimiwa. Yeah? And you are a guest number one for every Arambe. And it gets into your head and you think you would win. Yeah? we mix so many things and we lose focus. And then we think entrepreneurship is businessmanship. When you are a business, you are not an entrepreneur. We never look at opportunity. We replicate. What he has done, you replicate it, and then you both fail. But there is a lot of room for actually seeking for opportunity, exploiting that opportunity, and beginning to succeed. This is what Schumpeter was saying. A good entrepreneur is the one who gets somewhere and destroys himself, called it creative destruction, and creates anew. So when he's replicating, he finds you have moved to another level. But if you don't make any changes to your organization, those who would replicate would eat into you. Look at the retailers, yeah? It's just that make the shelves, we get goods, you know? That's all, that's all. If you have money, just get a big space, put the shelves, and the people would come. Haven't they been disrupted? The new models are coming. So in theory, we say you must be innovative, you must be a risk taker, and you must be very proactive in implementing the new ideas. So you can't complain that I've not done anything or government has not helped me in this. There's something internal to us that we need to do with ourselves. Then discipline, although it does interfere in many whatever, very highly disciplined, even if you call me Mheshimiwa, I will thank you. But let's do business first. But it gets into our head, and you have seen so many people. I suffered that. Everybody says, Governor one. You are the governor. Yeah? You don't even have to. You just say you want to vote for you. But the moment you announce, they are the ones who are telling you we need transport to go. You kill yourself. There was another question. 1, 2, or that. Yeah. Then it comes here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your time. It's been a really, really interesting talk here. I'm just curious what you'd have to say to critics of disruptive technologies who would argue that companies like Amazon Go, that while they may be creating new jobs, the jobs that they're taking away are the entry-level jobs, and ultimately replacing them with jobs that require a lot of skilled labor. And that the poorest parts of the country, the ones that can't afford the retraining, or can't afford the education, are the ones that ultimately need these jobs and are getting affected the most, therefore increasing the poverty gap by the implementation of these technologies. I'm just curious if...
In fact, I sort of answered that question when I said a lot of knowledge is here. I know people who have learned so many things through online and can be able to do other things. I know the low-end skills, they would move them away. But what they will be creating, Amazon Go, I had the benefit of actually talking when in Canada. They are going to be a global conveyor belt that you bring your tomatoes here according to the specs, you know? And that's where the discipline comes in. You bring your sukuma wiki, you bring your whatever. There will be multiple suppliers, but these multiple suppliers, some may not require those very high skills of those who would work in the back end. There will be opportunity for so many people to bring the products that would run through the conveyor belt. It's just that right now, already in the Whole Foods, there are people supplying into Whole Foods. They cannot go beyond that. But what they would demand is that the farmer gets agronomic information so that they produce according to the precise requirement the customers want. And through use of technologies that they have, they would actually know that you met those standards that their customers want. The problem is going to be that every person supplying there must have the knowledge and discipline to supply that. Today in this country, we import potatoes from Israel and Egypt because our potatoes cannot be peeled by the machines that Kentucky Fried Chicken has. Our farmers must be disciplined to know that you must know the date you planted. You must know the precipitation. You must know what you put here so that at the end you produce that potato that size. They have a lot of potatoes, but some are like this. You can't peel it. Even with the hand, you cannot peel it. Discipline has to be enforced, and that is where I don't know whether it's government to do it or whatever, because we have opportunities now. We have a market in Europe that needs organic foods. We can't do it. We can't follow the rules and supply Europe because of the ISO 9000, precisely what is required. We are missing that. We have joblessness, we have opportunity, but we can't get the level of discipline to be able to provide that. It is true that most of the jobs that will be erased would be the low end. And that's why I said lifelong learning. Even if you are with the low skills, you need to find out which area. Like now I have said, farming is going to be the most lucrative enterprise going forward. But you have to meet the standards. I went to Nakuru. A Chinese had 100 acres of onions. From onion number 1 to number 4 million, they were the same size. Even me, I was saying, how did you do this? But the rules must be followed, They utilize some of even things we have not put value. They take them to Longonot and they pump through the steam from there into the container. And they remain exactly that for 6 months. It's not the Kenyan market they want. They have markets in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, there is not even 1 acre you can plant anything. Singapore, those are the markets we must begin to look at. We must begin to whip people to leverage on opportunities that is not here, but somewhere else. These are things now I'm saying, for the people who will be losing jobs, we must be able to expand and retrain them to take care of the areas where there is opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, oops.
Just a quick one. Could you speak about the lack of creativity and entrepreneurship from in the workplace? That we have a culture in this country where people are more looking at opportunities to do something on the side rather than giving their ideas on growing the companies that they work for, and therefore reducing productivity.
We call that in theory entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Where it works, even in Western countries, it works where the owners have given incentives. You come up with an idea and they tell you, thanks, I pay you. You'll be foolish to give them another idea, so you would rather move out and do something else. So they must have, I was speaking about this to Microsoft. Microsoft, yesterday, they had a mega conference here, and they're trying to see how do we engage with Africa. And I said, if you don't want to look as a multinational company exploiting developing countries, begin to engage people to innovate and provide incentives. There are so many ways of doing it. And I was surprised they took it very positively. IBM did it. They brought the lab here and said, let's partner, we would share IP. Yeah? They're here. They have their lab. Philips, they're here. So they must begin to engage much more differently. Even the local companies must engage differently if they need to succeed.
Thanks. My question will drift a little bit. I'm a researcher and I'm interested in this idea of the digital economy and the move into the gig economy. And you talked about how immigrants are succeeding in other countries. And I'm wondering whether you know anything about what might happen if you're moving into a gig economy. And on the other hand, we're having so many people crossing borders into other countries, how that will play out, what we might expect, and what we should be preparing ourselves for.
Temporarily, I'm in support of that temporarily. Instead of our young men dying in the Mediterranean trying to cross to Europe, we can create those opportunities here. Europe actually needs people to work, but you don't have to be in Europe to work. And that is the way we can stop the numbers who are moving to Europe hoping to get opportunities in Europe. And the gig economy, if we manage it well, if we provide training, there are some people who do it by simply going online, training themselves on getting into some stuff and succeeding. But to do it mass, governments must create something like here, incubating people, making them understand the dynamics, teaching them on how to negotiate. That's the problem we have. Otherwise, they will be taken advantage of and boom, crashed. Yes.
Thank you for the talk. I really appreciate it. Mine is just a comment, not necessarily a question. I think the main reason why we don't innovate is because we don't really understand the user we are innovating for, and we don't really articulate the problem. So we kind of following the trend, like plastic paper bans, like the ban on plastic bags. Right now, I can bet that there are so many people stocking up the renewable, trying to sell. I think...
Let me correct you. We actually innovate, but we have not been serious enough to patent the innovations. People come up with simple innovations, but they don't see it as...
Yeah, I agree with that, but on the flip side, I think if you ask these people, what problem are you solving? Like going to the user, talking to the users, understanding the whole ecosystem, people try to take a shortcut to that. So you have mentioned Twig, and I was having a conversation with one of their employees, and the aspect of going to Meru, to a particular farm and staying with him for 1 week just to understand how the production, to get the data, and just to understand how the ecosystem goes. I think most of us kind of, you open shop, stock it, and then you pray to God that customers will start walking in, which should be the other way around, like go and talk to customer, understand their problems, pain points, and then design a solution based on that particular problem. And I think that's what I've been lacking. I've been talking to startups, and once I hear their story, I'm like, have you talked to someone? Are you imagining a problem that it exists?
That is the problem I have.
Yeah.
Almost on a daily basis, this young software, they come with a complete software. The same problem when we introduced family planning, people would come with 12 kids and say, give me the plan. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I remember one whom I told, go out there first and see whether that's a problem. Because an opportunity equals to a problem. An opportunity is a problem that has been flipped the other side. Go out, establish, understand the problem, and begin to solve the problem. Even multinationals, sometimes I find they send people to you and they have no idea what the problem is. They were just selling you something, this can help. I think if you watch Simon Sinek on TED, you would see what we are talking about, how Apple succeeded. And we need even our people. That's why I said all the knowledge is here. All the knowledge is in. If you saw that the rates for broadband went down, did you see that? Seriously down. We need to stop using broadband for social media and use it for something real, something that will make an impact. But this forum was meant that someone would come and say, I've talked to people this way, and I think this is a problem, and could we discuss it further? But people still think everybody will steal my idea. Actually, half of these people here have ideas which they don't want to share with anybody else. And they stay with them for 5 years. Yeah? Remember, I said proactiveness, risk-taking. Yeah, you must take risk and trust, you know. People think you would never, ever get married if you don't take a risk with someone's daughter. Because she could be a criminal, and when you are dead, she will kill you at night, isn't it? Yeah? But you take that risk, but you can't take risk with fellow friends here and say, let us brainstorm on this. Is this really a problem? And then you solve it. Let it go back. I have denied her. I just wrote.
Mine is just a
No, nothing. I said, she raised and I was biased.
Mine was just a comment. I wanted to add to what you were saying about technology and how it's eliminating jobs. I work at a hospital, so we were invited for a certain conference somewhere where we had these companies from Israel that were talking about machines that they are selling that can be used in healthcare. And so they had invited different healthcare practitioners. So we went for the seminar, or whatever you can call it, the presentation, and they were telling us about the machines that they have in healthcare. And so they were organizing a tour to Israel, and they were trying to encourage Kenyans to go to Israel to see the machines that they're selling. But I realized the room nearly went dead because those machines are eliminating jobs. They were showing us a machine that can be used to operate, meaning that you will not need surgeons, you won't need the nurses, and the operation can go from beginning to end without any medical person coming in. And I realized it was like doom. I just realized we really have a problem. Like, we're not ready at all. People were not ready for the kind of information we got that day. And you can imagine, like, for those who have studied medicine, they've spent a lot of money because medicine is a very expensive course. They've spent a lot of years, and it's been a really grueling time for them, only to come and be told that you can be replaced. And it really got me thinking, and that's why I came today, because I think we need to think about it. And when we start panicking, people got angry. Most of the doctors were just saying that, I've spent so much money, I've spent so many years studying, I have to get back, money for what I have done. So I think what you're raising is a very important issue.
Technology would move on whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not. And when they designed it, they looked at the problem that the doctors are prone to mistakes. So you refuse, Ndemo brings it and says, don't die on the operating table because of the doctor's mistakes. Yeah, artificial intelligence would operate with precision. Look at the customer. What will the customer say? Then you are properly displaced. But it is to encourage, understand it, and then figure out how you can use it to the best of your knowledge, and how you can use it also. You have to remain with technology. You have to remain with technology. Doctors will never be eliminated. Nurses will never be eliminated. Their jobs are perceptual jobs. Even the best of the AI have not discovered how to do with that. But if you have something that enables you to be more productive, more precise, you need to actually implement it. Yeah? If you want to look at the history of music, of music storage, we used to have the LPs. How many of you saw LPs? Yeah, look. Something that used to go around. It had a lot of problems because the sindano, what do you call sindano? The pin used to either break or do something, and the whole night you have nothing. So they brought the cassettes. Yeah, usually the LP and the cassette, the nice music used to be somewhere in the middle. So you run the cassette and stop there, and then you play. No, move a little bit ahead. It is somewhere there. So someone created what next? The CD, the micro CD. But today you have streaming, and you don't have any of those problems. Now, if we bring you the LP, would you buy it? You will not buy it. So these things, this is actually what Schumpeter said. You must allow yourself to destroy yourself. And a doctor, a nurse, will never be eliminated for several years to come. But you are going to have a lot of problems, because people would read on internet and they would ask you serious questions. What about that drug? I read somewhere there's drug interaction. If you are not ready, you will look like somebody from medieval times, because you actually need to upgrade. It is actually good to do that. Yes?
In response to the statement you made earlier about holding back on ideas,
yeah.
I've been following through with what you started with, opening up information access. And one of the things I was looking at was the white space technology. And I went to the extent of going till South Africa to follow up with what they were doing there.
We were doing a pilot in Nanyuki.
And I saw that it's actually quite interesting to note that even with what Microsoft is doing currently, they're doing a lot of, from what happened here in Kenya, in Nanyuki, with the Mawingu project, and what Google did in South Africa.
Yeah.
Microsoft is actually doing programs on a country level in places like Jamaica and Namibia, where I think for us, with all that has been discussed here, you find there's that fear of change, the fear of openness, and there's also like an active, for us in Kenya, with the access we have to information, we also need to look at an active campaign to not have technologies like that not be there.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would have expected the white space technology to have been implemented fully by now. But we started with it. The same thing you talked about, the projects we thought we were going to do them, but we're not going to do them. But I think the biggest thing for us is that access to information. Because you come to understand we're getting to a space where we're going to be knowledge workers. Not just workers, but knowledge workers. But when you have that access to knowledge curtailed, then you can't get to that space. And I love what is being shared by people in terms of the different workspaces they've been at and what they've been working through. But for me, what I've been looking at and what I've seen, even with the map you were showing us in terms of the poverty numbers, if you look at the countries where, right in the middle, it's like it's split right in the middle, where the countries which have the most resources, but where information has been curtailed, are the ones which are suffering the most.
Actually, that is policy. That's a government policy. If they have people who don't know, then they are able to steal.
Yeah, and that's it's such a sad state of affairs, but it's also for us, as you said, it's an opportunity for us, because if you look at what he talked of here, the disruptive technology, when Uber came in, it changed the whole landscape of what getting a taxi means. And that meant that policy had to be changed. But you're also seeing the same thing in a negative effect in terms of betting now. Like for betting, you with the access to information and the access to technology, it's easier for people to bet, but it's not really helping them to get a form of life. It's a false situation for us, because you're getting a lot of youth who get involved in betting because of that lure of you want quick cash. So it takes away that the hard work you would normally get to do if you're working in a consistent job. And the thing I learned when I was in South Africa is that even with what they've done with the research, the national body for doing research, they've developed technologies, but there's no one who is taking them up. Because in South Africa, from what I saw, is there's a mentality of people want to be employed, but as opposed to us where we want to create jobs and we go fully into a thing without researching how to do it. People there, you have a lot of whites who have the businesses, but blacks don't want to get into a place where they own a business. And for us having access to information as Kenyans, I think it's creating the biggest opportunity to grow Africa as a whole.
I think even in South Africa, the problem is engagement. If people have never been in enterprise, they cannot be in enterprise. But if it's a constant engagement and helping them, the reason why I here was to help people begin to understand, and you are helped until you begin to walk. This is what the programs, two programs in the world that have worked well for the youth. I think one is in Italy and the other one is in, I think, Auckland, in New Zealand, where they help you through. As we said, let's have the youth fund. And these youth are actually not told the business opportunities. This is where you should have brought the universities and say, if this fails, you are the one who fails. You must handle these young people to see opportunity, exploit opportunity. By now we would have so many enterprises employing so many people. But sometimes politics is, for expediency or something, they bring them something very quickly and say we have done that. I think we should have done more with the youth fund, the women fund, by creating incubation centers and telling them, taking money to buy used clothes to sell is not an opportunity. Yeah? But that is what people are saying. Give me 50,000, I go buy used clothing, I come to sell. It is not sustainable. And that's where we would have come in and say we would rather develop a machine that cooks ugali. You know, this machine, you can order it to give you the hard one or soft one or the very soft one. Because when you go to a restaurant, you just get anything that comes called ugali, because we have no standards. No standards, no scalability. So we are stuck, even a product that we have all the time, isn't it? When somebody from Western Kenya eats in Nairobi, they suffer, because the ugali they need is so hard like a stone, but they contend with whatever that comes called ugali on the table. And it's a serious idea, by the way, because you are not addressing the customer needs by doing. How come in meat you have rare, medium rare, and well done? Yeah? We should have rare ugali, medium rare. I wrote about it, only Israeli scientists called me, and I've done the cooking thing. They are going to pilot it here. Yeah? You put there, and shh, your rare is done. There was one?
Yeah.
Yes. And then.
Thank you, Professor, for the good talk. I think I would like to comment and make a request, a very humble request.
A request?
A request, yes.
Yes.
I think the issue of automation and the way jobs are being displaced has been, I think for the last 2 years has been a major caveat in the discussion, especially in technical discussions. One thing that's coming up is that, and it's a worry, is that technology is basically replacing jobs faster than it's creating the same jobs. We have Uber, for example, which created jobs by, anyone can be able to have access to, as long as you have a car, you have access to the app, you can make something, you can make some money. But now they are piloting automated cars, and of course that one now will bring in the issue of the automated cars displacing actual taxi drivers. I think you have answered this question through through education. Education will be a lifelong process, and also the gig economy. So I think now the request is coming in that I think this is something that we should discuss a bit more in depth. Because gig economy is not a new concept per se, but it's a new concept in the era of automation. Lifelong learning. For technical guys, we do lifelong learning. You must do lifelong. Yeah, it's a must for technical. But for, I think for other professionals.
Do you know the programs I studied?
Yes?
I did Fortran and Cobol.
Yeah, nowadays it's a bit different. There's Java, there's C#, there are many other. Yeah, so for technical, it's a must we do lifelong learning. Or for computer scientists, lifelong learning is a must. But, for lawyers.
Even the lawyers, by the way, much of their work, is gonna go and leave them arguing in court, because in these forms you see you sign and whatever, those you generate online and do whatever. But even them, they must have lifelong learning. I hope you watched the Supreme Court case. You saw how lawyers were inadequate, that they had no idea what they were talking about on the systems. It would go down in history, just that now we can't write, we can't say. They couldn't know the difference between a PowerPoint presentation and a video. And that's how serious it was, I was shocked myself.
Yeah.
Terribly shocked, on a simple IT question. They should have had either an expert there to help them answer those questions. So later, let it get finished, then we say the truth, what probably went on.
Yes, so that was my point. Like we have this mentality that we don't need to do lifelong learning. There's a general mentality that you don't need to amongst many people. So I'm requesting that if we can maybe organize on a forum on automation, on the gig economy, on these new jobs that are coming up, supported by big data. To create awareness and to hush some of the worries that are coming up, especially in the health sector, that machines will replace jobs.
That we can do anytime. We have something next month, but we can organize something around that. But let's begin to understand big data analytics. Everybody is gathering data from us, and then we must, and I've tested this, if you write a paragraph on WhatsApp, nobody reads. Twitter messed everybody. If it is not in one sentence, if you can't say it in one sentence, nobody reads. Let us begin to build a reading culture. That's our biggest problem. Even as we say lifelong learning, you must be able to read the whole book. You must be able to read a whole chapter of something to understand. You cannot say 2 lines, then you understand the new JavaScript. It's being done. It won't happen. So social media is causing more damage than good.
Yes. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, everyone, for the interesting discussion. My question is regarding the first part of your presentation, the target, 2030 poverty target. For Ethiopia, it's quite well documented, but what can we learn from Ivory Coast and Mauritania, which have quite different political system than Ethiopia? How do you explain the secret?
Oh, how do you explain? Of course, Mauritania has very few people. It's a large space. Is 3 million the population? 3 million there are very few people. I mean, even if you use the networks alone, can we check how many they are? I mean, let me check. 4 million. I mean, there are so few, but look at the land size. The size of the land. It's almost double Kenya. Yeah? Kenya is 500. It's double the size of Kenya. I mean, if you, the population, the same thing as in Botswana, by the way. Botswana is the size of Kenya, but they are 1 point something million. What? Yeah? The what? So it's not the land. If they use their resources well, that everybody benefits, obviously they would succeed, and they are succeeding. Botswana has got the highest per capita income in Africa, higher than South Africa. Yeah, higher than South Africa. Yeah, and Ivory Coast, it has a very complex history. You know, the northern dry area. What is the population of Ivory Coast? Yeah? Yeah? It's not much. The country that we must watch and learn from is Ethiopia, with a population of 100 million. 100 million, and their size is not too big. They don't even have a port. It's a landlocked country, you know. We have a lot to learn from Ethiopia than learning from Mauritania, where even if you give everybody 1,000 acres, nobody would complain. Nobody would complain. So one last, then I can finish.
Okay, thank you. So you talked about something very important about the eggs that we get from South Africa and the way our farmers are not able to compete with such. So I've also been interested in that sector, and we've started a small project whereby we are rearing chicken. And one of the major problems that Kenyan farmers face is the high cost of feeds. That has been a big problem. So to substitute on this, there is this idea of hydroponic feeds, whereby farmers can be able to grow their feeds. Their feeds grow within 7 days, and they are ready for the dairy cows. And for the chicken, you can be able to feed your chicken within 5 days. So with this idea, farmers will be able to have supply of food throughout the year, and it will also subsidize on the cost of feed. So that way farmers will, in as much as we are saying logistics is a problem, when they get such ideas, they'll be able to subsidize the cost of production. So in as much as farmers are also being told...
Have you seen that is an opportunity?
Yes, I have seen that
which
is
you
an
need
opportunity.
to exploit.
Yeah, and people might think that this is difficult or it's expensive, but the truth is it's not actually expensive. With just very simple trays, you can be able to grow a lot of feed. So if we could be able to get word out there to farmers and tell them that there's this method we can adopt to subsidize on the cost of feed, that will be also, it will be good.
You need to tell many people,
yeah,
and begin to help. But there is, if you ask, take like a survey in this room, what would you rather eat, kienyeji or the other chicken? Let's see. Kienyeji is it's called a road runner. The other name, it's chicken that grows normally, which is actually organic. And the other chickens are, what is the other chicken? Broilers. So people prefer kienyeji.
Okay, with such feeds actually, it's recommended for the kienyeji chicken because the conversion is faster. So they're able to convert such feeds faster when you feed them because it's green, it's protein.
You want to grow kienyeji faster? The sweetness of kienyeji is the time it takes to much.
Currently in Kenya, there has been developed a new breed of kienyeji chicken, which is still kienyeji. It's been developed by Kari.
GMO?
No, it's not GMO. It's not GMO. It's called improved kienyeji. It's not GMO. What they did, they took chicken from different parts of Kenya.
Yeah.
They put them in one area, which is in Naivasha.
Yeah.
So over time, they've been developing and taking traits of this because each chicken from different parts of the country, they have different traits. Some grow faster, some are more resistant to the diseases. So what they did, they took chicken from different parts of the country and they interbred them. So what has come up now, it's an improved breed. So it's not.
It should have its own name.
It's not. It's called improved kienyeji. That's what is. That's actually that's the name now.
Okay.
If you actually even Google, you can just Google and look for improved Kari kienyeji chicken. It grows faster. It's not been developed genetically. It's just the process of interbreeding, and that it grows within 5-6 months. Yeah.
Me, I will still eat kienyeji.
I think I missed out this question when I was speaking earlier, and it goes back to education. If entrepreneurship, how do we scale up very quickly, incorporating the thinking into our children? So probably we scale it up a lot, yes?
No. Scaling in business is expanding.
The seed idea of critical thinking years.
Okay. To do that, the kids must be left to play. if you see the whole of this city, the British built the social infrastructure. We used to play soccer in Kibera, where Kibera is. Down there used to be where we would go boating. What do you call it? The dam, there was water there. In fact, there was yacht clubs down there. In Eastlands, there was Kaloleni Social Hall. There were social halls to allow you wholesome, grow, playing, doing whatever. That is creativity. Come Africans, they grabbed everything. Everything. Now, your child grows in a 10 by 10, watching TV permanently, and thinking life is like in California, or when you are not there, they go into pornography. You are growing criminals in your house. So we must begin to build social infrastructure. Most of us went to Form 1 when we were 13, from Kisii to Nyeri, 13-year-old. I tried my wife when our son was 13. Let him go buy me a newspaper. She almost collapsed. Yeah? He will be crushed by a vehicle. And I'm telling her, if he is crushed, that's an accident. But let him go. She couldn't understand. So we have changed everything. I mean, you knew how to change buses in Nairobi, age 13. That's creativity. And most of those people came, looked for housing in Nairobi and stayed without their parents. Today, the parent has to buy you a flat before you move out of the house. That isn't creativity. We must change this thing. We say we need 3 acres where kids go and play, or 5 acres, or a place where kids, no TV, they are doing something. We must do it. You are already voted the government, so ask him for that.
In addition to what you have said with regards to his question, yesterday I was in a workshop at USIU that was talking about transforming education. And so several schools that are doing it differently, for example, Moonlight and Nova Academies brought their students, and their students talked about Nova, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Educate. There is also an organization called Educate, which works with Kawaida schools to help them to learn these processes of creativity. So the narrative was that our schooling system, we need to rethink it, because if we are training people, everyone is going there and they are trained and they come out, there is nothing they can do, then we are failing. So that there could also be an element of something we can do from our education system.
Don't leave everything to teachers. Americans, during summer, they allow their kids to go out and sell lemonade. When they come back with money, they would ask them to pay the cost of the powder, the cost of water, yeah? And then what remains, they tell them this is profit, yeah? That is the best entrepreneurship training, when you know what profit is. You can guess that I've had so many people come to me, I want to do something with my life, give me money. So you give them 20,000, and a month later they are back saying, I need money to do something. I say, what happened with the other one? I paid school fees for my kids. I said, I thought it is the profit you would have paid, because the initial was capital. They can't differentiate between capital and the profit. That's a problem. Even a grown-up person cannot differentiate that. That is why most of SMEs are collapsing, because they swallow both the capital and the profits. So we need to have, I don't know what you are going to do, but that's.
I see the opportunity, and as you said, it's good to give out ideas. Some of them pick it up and take it to the end. A few years back, I traveled to Cambridge. I spent about a week there. Just trying because, I mean, I could get the ones to go there and I couldn't afford it, but this time I just go visit a tourist. And I realized how big a brand it is. We all sit down and we're examined by this university and how much revenue the whole world takes back to them. Because it's the one that runs Cambridge as a town. It's one of the most expensive, richest, purely for the exams that we all take our kids in expensive schools to. I think there is a need for entrepreneurial education in Africa. I think people in this room can sit together and develop a program based on themselves. See, how did the Chinese stay for 10 years cycling, and they felt proud of cycling because they were producing bicycles in their own country, while we all laughed at them. Look at them, they don't have cars. Now today, they're building the cars, and they understood why they were cycling at that time. Today, they can drive a Porsche. Us, we're still.
You say this is a business opportunity.
Yes, it's a
if you had 20 acres in Tangela, you could have a retreat for parents who can't find a playing ground. And when they come, kids ride bicycles. It used to be beautiful to fall down and you are hurt, you see blood, you know.
And I think also entrepreneurship.
Yes.
I think that there's an opportunity to develop an entrepreneurship program for us here and for our kids, which I think we can push to education. You can start privately, and of course with mobile phones and technology now. It's a really big opportunity.
Got it. I want to thank you for coming. Next we have. Yeah? No, the topic we have somebody who has requested to. Well, we will send you the topic, but we want to begin to do more than we have done, because after the lecture we get people who want help, private, whatnot and stuff, and everything is all free. I hope when you succeed you buy me lunch, but we want to get to another level, which we would announce at some point, to where we can create impact on the ground. For example, these aggregation things, to help the people in the rural areas begin to understand these concepts which you are asking here. They don't know. Yeah, they don't know. And I discovered writing doesn't help, because we've been saying to farmers, don't subdivide your land below certain. The people in Nyeri, the reason why I said here is because they used to have bigger farms of coffee. And then they chopped those farms and gave their sons. The break-even point for the coffee that they used to have used to be 2 acres. You need to have 3 acres to make money. So when they chop it into 4 sons and everyone takes less than half an acre, they're not making money. They are wasting like the guy with eggs. So we need that message to sink so that they begin to do something. And when they don't make money, they uproot it. They don't have a replacement for that. We must find a way of communicating to these people on the ground and begin to change their livelihood. And there are several other things that we can do that impacts people, not just here in Nairobi, but in the rural areas. So we would talk about it maybe in our October we have somebody to speak. Yeah?
The October conversation is on drones.
Drones. Yes. How do we commercialize? Anyway.
Yeah, just quickly. In regards to big data, where can we get access to them?
We created Kenya Open Data. We have this. I think they are going to create the APIs accessing this. We're pushing telcos, if they can anonymize some of that data and give it philanthropically for people to use them for various other solutions. But for government, we want to ask that they increase the number of data sets to do that. But you can also collect your own data and begin to use it. You remember we said here, he said, somebody, are you the one who said how they gather data? They will send somebody to the village to talk to people and they gather that data. And it becomes very useful to some of the people who need it to develop their own businesses. We have opportunity to create some of the data. I am actually interested, like things you think they are jokes. We need to know the average consumption of ugali. How many can guess the grams or kilos one person can eat? It depends whether it's a calcium corn. It's a very serious thing, by the way, because that's how you can estimate the consumption. It's serious data, by the way. It's serious data. Just go think about it. So I want to thank you for coming. So we would have better things than this. Did you have any? Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Just one quick announcement. Around September, I have launched a Women in Entrepreneurship series. And so it's basically this kind of conversation, but with a larger participation from women, although men are welcome. So we had the first one, and it was just about introducing women into the aspect of entrepreneurship and encouraging them to actually take the plunge and becoming entrepreneurs. And it went really well. We had great speakers, professionals in their fields, including a lady that runs an entrepreneurship school. We had about 100 women in the space. It was sold out. And so we're going to do it again on 4th October. It runs from 8:30 to 12:30, and this time we're going to be talking about your online presence, about branding, and about IP. Again, with really brilliant speakers, professionals in their field that have been doing it for a while. So the announcement, I think, will go up on our blog and on our events page either Monday, Tuesday next week, so please look out for it and sign up before it gets sold out. So again, it's tailor-made for women, but I mean the conversation cuts across, and so men are also encouraged to attend. And also during the program, there's a little bit where we do elevator pitches. So it's a good time to just talk about what you do. You have like 3 minutes to do it and then get immediate feedback from the audience. So karibuni, 4th October from 8:30 a.m.
Would they be interested? In the course of our teaching and research, we find that it is very difficult for African women to do as good as African men in entrepreneurship. And there are several factors which, would you be interested we explore that? Women entrepreneurship, men are not saying... Yeah? Yeah?
But men can come and listen.
No, they must be there because the solution is men. They are the ones who say, I love you, honey, but 6 o'clock you have to be at home. And that's when the customers are coming to the business, the fear that darkness causes other things. Yeah. Thank you. We can arrange it then another time. Maybe December, November or December? November, December.
Great, that's it. Thank you for coming.